way to the mic. They start dimming the lights, you start feeling alright. From Birmingham, home of the Teddy Longs and the Ruben Studders. More once you discover. For all of the lovers of Whitney Houston and Roman Reigns. For all of the lovers of Mickey James and Marvin Gaye. For all of the lovers of Sasha Banks, Janelle Monáe, Silk, Sonic, and Paige. Allow me to say, look, I just found a place, sweet escape. Every one of us, I was kinda late, so I just made it off the struggle bus. Walking by the faith, cause I know it's right in front of us. Yo, I ain't with the hate, gotta focus on what's great. Ladies and gentlemen, Steph Hardy is on the air. Had to drop a couple bars just to make you all aware. So, sit back, relax, enjoy the show. You know I go by Joe or the rest of the flow.
Hey y'all, welcome to this new episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl Stephanie Hardy. So of course on this episode I've got your news and gossip-ish, but I'm also going to celebrate wrestling's place in Birmingham, Alabama, my hometown, after Smackdown rolled through here yesterday, and it was an amazing show. So I'm going to address that, and I'm going to talk about what I liked in wrestling this week, including the Smackdown episode I got to experience. So sit back, relax, and listen to the chill, positive, and passionate stylings of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast. It's Birmingham, y'all. All right, so in news and gossip-ish, basically, there's been a lot that went on that's basically gone on in like even the past couple of hours, and over the course of the last day or so. But I'm gonna get through most of it and talk about a lot of different things, so bear with me. So earlier this week, it was announced that Vader was Big Van Vader, depending on, if you know him or not, from the early wrestling days, is going to be posthumously inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. So this was announced earlier this week, and a lot of people were very happy about it. But then there were a lot of mixed reviews online full of people who felt like maybe this should have happened earlier when he was actually well enough to speak on his own behalf and tell his own stories and live to see it happen. Because sadly, he did pass away in 2018 due to illness. But there are a lot of people who really feel like he's very deserving of the honor. So if you may or may not know, his real name was Leon Allen White, and his ring names were either Big Van Vader or Vader. And he also played professional football, and he wrestled for New Japan Pro Wrestling, WCW, of course, WWE/WWF, All Japan Pro Wrestling, and Pro Wrestling Noah during the 90s and the 2000s. And he was a 12-time world champion. And while performing as his character, he developed a lot of aerial maneuvers, and one of them being his diving moonsault, which was voted best wrestling maneuver of 1993 by Wrestling Observer Newsletter. And among other accolades in WCW and in Japan, he won the IWGP Heavyweight Championship and the WCW World Heavyweight Championship 3 times each, the Triple Crown Heavyweight Championship twice, the WCW United States Heavyweight Championship once, and won the Battle Royal main event of the 1993 Battle Bowl pay-per-view. And he headlined multiple pay-per-view events for WWE and WCW, and he was inducted into the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame in 1996. So it's clear he is more than deserving of the honor. And there's no word yet on who's going to be inducting him. Just like they did announce that Vince McMahon will be the one who's going to induct The Undertaker. We don't know who's going to induct Vader into the Hall of Fame as of yet, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be a nice and tasteful event. And considering it's also been announced that the Hall of Fame is going to be a 2-in-1 event along with the Smackdown before WrestleMania weekend. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to be tastefully done. But we send congratulations to Vader's family, that they get to experience this moment and experience him getting honored. But they haven't announced a woman being added to the class as of yet. And with WrestleMania being 22 days away, or as of now 21 days away, I'm sort of wondering who would they choose. Would it be a Victoria, or, you know, a lot of people have been pushing for Jazz to be not added to the Hall of Fame. Who knows? But congratulations to Vader. And even though he's not going to be here to receive the honor, it's still, you know, an honor to receive. So it's still good. Also in the news, that's been going crazy over the past day, is Big E giving medical updates on Twitter and on his Instagram. If you watched Smackdown last night, which did emanate from the Legacy Arena at the BJCC in Birmingham, which is where I'm from, he wrestled in a tag team match, partnered with Kofi Kingston against Sheamus and Ridge Holland, who had brought Pete Dunne, aka Butch, out there. And I'll talk more about that part later. And there was a suplex that Ridge Holland tried to hit onto Big E outside of the ring onto the floor, and Big E, in a freak accident, I believe, landed wrong when it happened, and he landed right on his head. And it was so scary because when I was looking at what was going on, it was almost like you heard a thud, and everyone in the arena sort of just got up and was just looking like, whoa, like what the heck was that? And you could tell that during the match, people were wondering if Big E was going to get up. You saw a lot of people outside of in WWE staff that was wondering if he was waking up and checking on him and checking, you know, his extremities or whatever. And then the match didn't go on for that much longer after that point. And Sheamus and Ridge Holland will go on to win after interference from Butch/Pete Dunne or whatever. And they were still checking on him throughout the match. And as they were able to go to commercial or whatever, they brought out the stretcher and basically stretchered him out, but then he was able to move his hands and fingers, and he gave us a thumbs up as he was leaving. So Big E announced on Twitter that night that he broke his neck, and it's a really serious deal if you are a wrestler and you do break your neck, because that means that you might be out for months on end trying to heal whatever was wrong. So it was a really scary situation to actually witness, but I am glad that he's still able to move his extremities and have use of them even while his neck is broken. But at the hospital he's at, which is UAB, and shout out to UAB because they have some of the best medical staff, you know, in the city. They have been taking care of him, and Big E actually said that if you were going to get your neck broken anywhere, do it in Birmingham because they're going to take care of you. And, you know, we do have a little bit of a history of taking care of wrestlers when they do have injuries. Mostly at St. Vincent's Hospital, but I guess UAB, you know, is stepping up to the challenge this time, and shout out to them because they've been holding it down for the past 2 years now with COVID and everything, so that's good. But he basically tweeted a video saying that he suffered no damage to his spinal cord and he won't need surgery, which is fantastic. But he did confirm that he broke his C1 and C6 vertebrae, however. And of course he's going to be out, but something that's been happening that's absolutely gorgeous is the fact that everybody across all promotions have been sending him love and well wishes, you know, for him to recover, which basically shows how beloved he is as not only as a character but as a man. And I'm so happy that he's receiving all of this love and his flowers. And of course his New Day brothers Kofi and Xavier rushed to be by his side at the hospital, and Xavier actually tweeted as much. So I'm wishing Big E the absolute best in his recovery, and I can't wait to see him back in wrestling. But and really he's just done so much within the past, you know, couple of months with him being champion and him holding it down, even when he wasn't champion and stuff. He's basically been doing a great job. So it's probably for the best at this point that he does, of course, rest up and heal up so he can be his best self later on. It's going to suck for a while, but, you know, he'll turn around and he'll be back again. And I'm believing that. So shout out to Big E. We love you here. Also in the news, Samoa Joe talked about being in WWE's new video game 2K22 after his release. He is actually currently a playable character in the new game, which came out, I believe, Friday. And basically, there's also there's a list of other superstars who are on the game who no longer work with the company too, like Cesaro, the Iconics, Isaiah Swerve Scott or Swerve Strickland now, Jeff Hardy, Keith Lee, Johnny Gargano, and many others. So he spoke how this process worked for him when he appeared on Kind of Funny Games Daily. He was asked how WWE was still able to keep him in the game despite no longer being with the company. And he answered by saying, quote, "It's built into our contract and it's a licensing agreement. I am Samoa Joe. That's a trademark that I own. For me, it's a little different than most guys because I have a licensing agreement and we negotiated our price based off of that. It's essentially the same type of thing with guys who don't own their name. When you leave there, that character is still there for their properties." So basically it's a business deal. And basically what's next for him now is that he's still under a non-compete clause with WWE, and his 90 days will be up on April the 6th, 2022. And of course, he's also been announced as a Ring of Honor Hall of Fame inductee, along with a who's who of Ring of Honor historic figures like Bryan Danielson, CM Punk, and the Briscoes. So congratulations to Samoa Joe for being an inductee in the Ring of Honor class this year. And it's going to be cool to see what's next for him. Because a lot of people felt like, he really didn't get a fair shake at things when he did get injured while he was NXT champion for the third time, and they didn't really bring him back because NXT 2.0 went through that whole revamp situation and no one knew where he was going to lie, and then he was eventually let go again. So I can't wait to see what's next for Samoa Joe at this point. Also in the news, Ronda Rousey has been basically giving an update on her WWE future. So as you may or may not know, Ronda had one run in the WWE, of course, towards 2018, 2019, and she had a pretty big undefeated streak until she was defeated by Becky Lynch in the first women's main event of WrestleMania to become a double champion. And she basically left for a long time because her and her husband were trying to take care of their farm, Rousey Acres, and also have a child, which they did have, their beautiful daughter, which is great. So we didn't see her for a long time until she made her return at the Royal Rumble this year and went on to win that, so she could go on to face Charlotte Flair for the SmackDown Women's title this year. And she basically said during a gaming stream on Facebook that she's staying in WWE after WrestleMania 38. She said, "I just had a baby. I'm not ready to have another one yet, so I'll be staying around until we're ready for baby number 2 or even baby number 4. And I know personally a lot of people have been looking at this current run of Ronda Rousey as kind of lukewarm, and they don't necessarily like it because they think that she either has ring rust or the fact that they also feel like she just can't wrestle at all for some reason. It's like the sentiment towards her being back in the WWE has been relatively negative. But for me, from my personal standpoint, I actually have always loved Ronda Rousey even before she went to WWE, and that hasn't really shaken for me. Like, that doesn't change for me because I literally feel like even though she has been putting in a little bit of the work in order to improve her in-ring, her in-ring work, her persona to me needs a little bit more help, because even when I was at Smackdown last night, there were some parts where I really couldn't hear her in the microphone, and it seems like the hate that her and Charlotte are trying to, give off really isn't, popping off as heavy as it did during her first run. Like, there's something missing there, and I'm hoping that they can lock into it over the course of the next few days as WrestleMania approaches. But I'm still rooting for Ronda Rousey to beat Charlotte because I just love Ronda. So, and if you basically look on social media, I did post a video of me screaming over her during her entrance or whatever because I love her. So I'm hoping that as she does stay, her character development will actually, get better, and just evolve past where it has been now. And her in-ring work will actually get a little bit better too. So I'm glad that she is staying though, because her leaving for a long time, that would just make me sad, because I did actually miss her. So there's that. Also in the news, we have the rumor that Gable Stevenson, who is, of course, the Olympic gold medalist in wrestling for the United States, is going to be in line for a big WWE push. So, it's been rumored by Dave Meltzer, who we're still taking with a grain of salt, that Gable Stevenson will be fast-tracked to WWE's main roster, and the plan for him is to be booked as supposedly a whole nother Brock Lesnar or whatever. So the reason why we haven't seen him on TV now is because he's finishing up his final year as an amateur wrestler at the University of Minnesota after winning his gold medal in wrestling last year. And he's recently won his third consecutive Big Ten title and will look to win back-to-back national championships before making the move to WWE. And of course, they signed him in September under the NCAA's new name, image, and likeness rules, which is the NIL rules, which allowed him to be under contract with WWE while still competing collegiately. So this is pretty great. If this is the case, I can't wait to see, how he's going to adapt to the world of WWE, even though he is an amateur. He's an amateur wrestler now. I think this is going to be great for him. It's going to be great publicity, seeing as he'll be in good company amongst people who've gone to the Olympics and had success in wrestling, like Kurt Angle, and the fact that he's from Minnesota, like Brock Lesnar and stuff. So I'm really excited to see where this is going to go. So yeah. Also, in terms of gossip-ish, there's a question mark on the idea of whether or not Cody Rhodes has WrestleMania plans. So there's been lots of rumors going into what Cody Rhodes is going to be doing in wrestling, since he and Brett and his wife Brandy have parted ways with AEW, which is a company that they helped build. So Sean Ross Sapp, who is the man who I think has a crystal ball and sees things, of Fightful Select, reported that the plan for Cody Rhodes was for him to fight against Seth Rollins at WrestleMania 38, and according to one source with WWE, that has not changed. And the same report stated that some in AEW assumed the deal with WWE is dead and that he will return to AEW, but there was no concrete information to support those claims. And Sapp did reveal that there will be someone worth looking out for in the Hollywood trades. So Cody Rhodes is still a question mark at this point, in terms of where he may or may not go. But I still think it is interesting, seeing as Seth Rollins really doesn't have anyone to face, because he did lose his tag team championship opportunity with Kevin Owens against RK Bro and the Alpha Academy. So of course now Kevin Owens has famously called out and challenged Stone Cold Steve Austin to a match/appearance on the Kevin Owens show at WrestleMania. But we don't know what Seth is going to do, because he kind of stared off into outer space and walked away, and we don't know what's going to happen with that. So, but like I said, they still have time, because it's just in 21 days. So it's interesting where this is set to go, but I still think this is going to be a really great show regardless. So yeah, if Cody does show up though, I can't imagine how crazy the internet's gonna go and how crazy us fans are gonna go, but it's going to be a lit situation. So yeah, shout out to Cody and whatever it is that he does decide to do with his wife and stuff. And finally, in the news, Jeff Hardy, my other brother from another mother, made his debut on All Elite Wrestling on Wednesday's episode of Dynamite. And he made the save when his brother, my other brother, Matt, was getting beat down with Sting and Darby Allin by Andrade El Idolo, Private Party, and the Butcher and the Blade. So after this point, he was announced as an official member of the AEW roster by Tony Khan on Twitter. And if you may or may not remember, he was released by WWE in December after a strange incident at a live event in Corpus Christi, Texas, during which Hardy left through the crowd in the middle of a 6-man tag team match. And according to Sean Ross Sapp, WWE offered Jeff the chance to go to rehab, but Jeff declined, which resulted in his release. But Matt provided more information regarding Jeff's departure, in January on a Twitch stream. He said that Matt said that Jeff was giving a drug test by WWE prior to his release, and Matt said the result never came back, but Jeff knew he had passed because he hadn't been using any drugs or alcohol. So Matt also suggested that WWE jumped the gun by releasing Jeff and expressed his belief that the stress of working for WWE is what prompted Jeff to walk out rather than any issues with drugs or alcohol, which is something that Jeff has been struggling with for years, which is his sobriety. And I guess as WWE being a publicly traded company, they were afraid that if he was, slipping back into his old habits, that would look bad on them. And they were just trying to, not put any of their stars in danger. But at the same time, if you know that you're not doing any wrong and you're actually taking your sobriety seriously, then that would make you angry. And I guess the two just couldn't come to any agreement there, which led to him being released. Or at least him walking away. So I am absolutely thrilled that the Hardy Boys are back together, especially even in the indies too, because they can perform wherever they want to now, because they did reunite in the indies before they reunited on AEW. So I am excited to see that the other half of the Hardy Boys is back with his brother now, and a part of the Hardy family office. So this is great, and it's also assumed that they will go on to possibly challenge for the AEW tag team titles that are currently being held by Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus. So we just have to see, but Hardy Gang, we in here, and it's cool. So that's all. Well, actually, no, that's not all, because another person signed with AEW, and it's former UFC and bare knuckle fighter Paige Van Zant. After weeks of teasing an official signing, Tony Khan also announced that Paige Van Zant is going to be a member of AEW's roster as well, and she also appeared on Dynamite and had a run-in with Ty Conti during the TNT Championship match between Sammy Guevara and Scorpio Sky, and she threw Ty into the ring steps, and the distraction allowed for Scorpio Sky to pin Guevara and win the title, making him the first black TNT champion that AEW has ever had. Congratulations to him. But yeah, this is mostly about Paige Van Zant, who then signed her contract on top of Ty Conti's booty as the show went off the air. And she made her first appearance in AEW in September as a part of American Top Team's feud with Chris Jericho. So I guess this is cool if you are a UFC fan, if you're mostly exposed to her in that way. So yeah, just lots of new signings going on in AEW. It's popping off in a new way, so there's that, and it's cool. So that's all for news and gossipish, and now I'm going to talk about my experience with Smackdown being back in Birmingham. All right, so in this segment of the podcast, I want to talk about my Smackdown experience last night. So for those who watched Smackdown last night, or may not have watched it, or you're probably watching it later because on demand or whatever, Smackdown took place in Birmingham, Alabama. Now, since WWE has started, their touring schedule back, a lot of people here were wondering, when exactly is it going to come back here? Because Smackdown had basically been in Birmingham on a very consistent basis over, recent years and stuff like that. And we always wondered exactly when it was going to happen, because there was, they had announced like the first crop of cities that they were coming back to. Then it was like a second crop of cities. And then, of course, as the weeks went on, they continued, their touring schedule a little bit heavier, even during, certain variants of COVID going around or whatever. But it wasn't like they were doing it in an unsafe manner. It's like they were having different protocols in place that you had to follow in order to go to certain shows. But a part of us we were all wondering, when is it going to come back here? And on top of that, there was the idea that our arena, the Legacy Arena at the BJCC, was being renovated because, of course, the BJCC is a relatively old was a relatively old building. And they were revamping it for, other events that we have around the city, like, our G League team, the Birmingham Stallions, play there. And there are also various concerts that are still popping off there and everything as well. So it was just revamping itself, giving it a whole new look and just undergoing renovations during the time of the pandemic as well. So once it was finished, once the renovations were finally finished, they finally announced the schedule, and WWE was set to come during March, which is, of course, a great time for wrestling to come, considering it's the road to WrestleMania. And it was a beautiful show from start to finish. I regret nothing about the experience. The show was great. The superstars who did come, put in an amazing effort to give us a great show. And it was almost felt like, even if you watched it on TV, you felt like it was a little bit of a love letter to the city of Birmingham, in a sense, in terms of it rising. I felt like it was sort of like a perfect marriage between Birmingham rising and its growth over the past couple of years, and wrestling sort of coming to meet it there. And it was a perfect marriage between the two. And something that I feel like isn't really discussed a whole lot in wrestling spaces is the fact that Birmingham, has a rich wrestling history. And actually the state of Alabama as a whole has a rich wrestling history because, of course, in the South you have various promotions, that would come through Birmingham, all the time and perform at the Boutwell Auditorium, which is still very much an active auditorium to this day. And I know my grandmother, my late grandmother, would attend a lot of these events at the Boutwell Auditorium, sometimes sneaking out of church to go to certain events, wrestling events and stuff. It's funny. And I wish you were here to talk about it. But she would go to various wrestling events and such and see people such as your Arn Andersons and your Ric Flairs, and wrestlers of that time period fight. And then there's continental wrestling that took place in various states of the South, like Kentucky and Tennessee, and even here as well. Because even Shawn Michaels mentioned that during one of the phases of which, he was trying to do WWE, but then nothing really clicked at first because he was going through certain issues on his own. They sent him to Birmingham, Alabama for Continental Wrestling to shape up his wrestling skills. So there's just a lot of history, in Birmingham when it comes to wrestling, and a lot of people really don't discuss as much. Plus, not to mention, when it comes to wrestlers getting injured, getting serious injuries, they would get sent here to Birmingham to be healed by former sports medicine surgeon, Dr. James Andrews. And they would send them to St. Vincent's Hospital, in order for them to rehab their injuries or get surgery. Well, they would get the surgery and then rehab their injuries a lot of the time. And their sports medicine wing is even named after James Andrews because, of course, he's not active in medicine anymore. He's retired. But basically, they would come there, and they even have pictures of various wrestlers who would come and rehab there, and then they would autograph certain pictures and hang them up there and such like that. So basically, and there have been times where my dad would wear wrestling t-shirts to various doctor's appointments he would go to with me and my sister, or even for himself or for my mom, and they would talk, and some of the nurses would talk about certain wrestlers that they have met at the hospital and stuff like that. So basically, people come to Birmingham to heal, and even now with Big E, him being at UAB hospital and healing his, and them basically, helping him heal his injuries in terms of his broken neck. Like, there's a lot of there's just so much history in wrestling, from Birmingham and even in Alabama that a lot of people really don't discuss as much. And I feel like a lot of that sort of ties into where we are now with wrestling. And I know when I came back from Smackdown, I was talking to my dad a little bit about how in the past it seemed as if how various wrestling promotions like WCW or even at times even WWE would sort of give like a filler show, or like shows, not up to par as the shows that they would give in places like, say, New York or like Atlanta or bigger cities like Miami, like they were at, or Jacksonville, Florida, or stuff like that, like, or New Orleans or places like that. Like they would sort of give these greater, high level top tier shows where a lot of their stars would show up in other cities, but then the minute they get here to Birmingham, which wasn't, I will say, on the level of those cities, they would get here and they wouldn't give, the same amount of effort that they would give other cities. But that's clearly changing now. And considering also Birmingham struggled a little bit with people who would come to wrestling shows, but they wouldn't necessarily sell out as much. And a lot of people wondered if because of that reason alone that events would stop coming here, but they would still come here and still give us, the best that they could regardless. And of course, me being a child, I would still go to these events and still have the time of my life regardless of who would show up or whatever. But just hearing that from my father's perspective, being a longtime fan and seeing how how WCW and WWF or /WWE would treat, Birmingham sort of like the filler city, and seeing the difference of that now, it's just pretty amazing. So, of course, this last night was incredible. And I feel like I have to start by saying that because there are some people who, and including myself, I will say this and be transparent. I was upset that Roman Reigns didn't show up and I didn't get to acknowledge my tribal chief and my head of the table. I was very mad about that. But the idea that the rest of the show was trash because Roman Reigns didn't show up is a really, really kind of off-base thing to say and tone-deaf thing to say, seeing as we got most of, if not all of, the major stars and the major players of SmackDown that we've been seeing on a more consistent basis on television since the road to WrestleMania has started. Because even though Roman Reigns wasn't there, we still had Brock Lesnar start off the show, the WWE champion start off the show. You still had Ronda Rousey show up to Birmingham, which I thought would almost never happen because of how major of a star she is in the MMA circle and the wrestling circle now, but she really did show up. And then you also had Sasha Banks, you had Naomi, you had Carmella, and you had Queen Zelina, the women's tag team champions. You had Natty, but Natty's been here before, and you had Shayna. But Natty's been here multiple times, but you still had, those major players. You even had Shotzi Blackheart and Xia Li perform a dark match even before SmackDown started. You had Pat McAfee on commentary and him doing an amazing job jumping on Austin Theory because he was tired of his crap and he beat him up and stuff like that. Like, you still had a lot of the major players. You still had Drew McIntyre and Happy Corbin come in and whatever. So, and then you still had Sami Zayn and Ricochet and Paul Heyman even show up. And even the tag team champions, the Usos, showed up. So everybody and their mama was there, even though Roman Reigns wasn't. And I don't know what the reason was behind him not being there, but the thing that most diehard wrestling fans know is the fact that when you see commercials, for wrestling shows, when they advertise certain matches, the card is always subject to change in terms of creative stuff or in terms of certain wrestlers not being able to show up. Wrestling cards are subject to change. This is something that even I know as a person who works behind the scenes, for the Belladonna division as a commentator. You have to be able to adapt to various changes, because when our show was going on in January, the weather was bad and stuff like that, and certain people couldn't make it to our show, so we had to rearrange certain matches to go a certain way. And that's just business. That's show business. Like when a person can't perform, you get the understudy to perform. Like, that's just how show business goes. That's just how the game is. So to basically, say that this show was bad or it wasn't the best show that it could have been just because Roman Reigns wasn't there or just because your one favorite wasn't there is almost a disservice to how how the other people who did show up performed, and the amount of great time that everybody else had, you know, at the show. Like, that's almost saying like that doesn't matter. And it does matter. Like, it really does matter, because I still enjoyed myself. A lot of people still enjoyed themselves. And even though they may have been bummed that Roman Reigns didn't show up, they were still having a good time at the show regardless. So, yeah, I just wanted to point that out, because I feel like in this case, this show was really a testament. I feel like this show really did fit how Birmingham is growing as a city, and how Alabama is growing to be viewed, you know, in terms of wrestling as a whole, because you have so many various wrestling promotions, you know, popping off and doing amazing things. Like, you have New South Wrestling, and how, well, not New South, New Era Wrestling, that had their event at Comic-Con last month, and how they were able to incorporate their wrestling show for the first time there. Like, that's great. You have the work with the Belladonna division, and how it's on Fight TV now. Like, that's a good thing. Like, that's popping off in a major way. And then of course, like, you had Smackdown that happened last night, and you have Birmingham that's growing itself as a city, because something notorious that's been happening to Birmingham for years, and a lot of people don't know this because they may not live here, is that the culture behind big things happening in Birmingham is really new, and it's rarefied air, because even though stuff has been coming to Birmingham and concerts come to Birmingham every now and again, it's just, this is really the first time in a few years where a lot of major players have actually been flocking to Birmingham because of its growth. Like, there were times where within the city council, or even within politics and stuff like that, where people would try to pull Birmingham forward to the level of places like Charlotte, North Carolina, and Atlanta, Georgia, and stuff like that, but it would always be other people who were set in their ways that would try to pull it 10 steps backwards. And now we actually have the leadership that's actually young and youthful, and full of other people who may not be as young and youthful, but still have progressive mindsets, where they want to see Birmingham succeed on the level of certain cities like that, and pull in various events. Like, we're actually having the World Games, you know, take place in July. Like, Billie Eilish had a concert here a couple of weeks ago. So, I mean, we've had major players come before, but it had been like a huge space of time where a lot of major stars were not coming, because people like in the city weren't buying tickets to these things, or they just felt like, you know, it wasn't important enough, or just certain various, you know, reasons as to why people wouldn't do stuff or go to things or whatever. And finally, it feels like for the very first time, not for the very first time, but it feels like for the first time in a long time, Birmingham is finally rising to its greatest potential as a city. The Legacy Arena underwent, you know, renovations and stuff even during the pandemic, and now we have a G League team. We're about to have a USFL team again. Like, we have the Protective Stadium, which is home of UAB Blazer football. Like, there's just so much of Birmingham that is finally rising to the occasion of what it can be. And now, with that happening, Smackdown was treating Birmingham like it was a big deal, even on television. Because my dad watched some of it on TV, and he was saying that the way that Pat McAfee and Michael Cole kept saying, you know, the names of Birmingham over and over again, and treating it with the respect that Birmingham deserves, even as the road to WrestleMania is going through it, was just a breath of fresh air. And I can honestly say, for the first time since I've been going to wrestling events, even as an adult, this is probably the first time I've been to a live event in Birmingham, Alabama, and nobody has joked about Alabama or Alabama football, or brought up Crimson Tide or Roll Tide or anything, or did jokes at Birmingham's expense and called it like a trash city, or disrespected it in any way, shape, or form. This was the first event I've been to in so long where nobody had trashed Birmingham like that. Nobody had cracked on Birmingham like that. And it's a breath of fresh air because we deserve the best of everything that life has to offer this city. It's people, our people, who we are hard work. We are hard work. Our work ethic is amazing. Like, we are Southern hospitality. Like, we're good to you. Like, we take care of you and all of that. Like, we have the restaurants. Like, we have all this popping stuff, but don't nobody know that because don't nobody really like try to give us a chance because we're not all these other big booming places and stuff like that. But we got it going on. Y'all just don't know it. And then on top of that, I'm just happy to even be a small part of it. Even with my podcast and even with the stuff that I do with Women's Wrestling Talk and the Belladonna division, I'm proud to even be a small part of that growth. Like, if I am a part of what the growth of wrestling in Alabama can be like, then I'm just really happy to be a part of it during this point in time. And we deserve all of the good things. And this show was good from top to bottom. Like, it really was. And just the turnout. Like, I'm so proud of my city for the turnout because even though it didn't necessarily sell out, the amount of people that did show up was still great numbers. Like, I saw so many people. Like, I saw people that I knew, people I met at Comic-Con, people who I've been friends with in terms of family stuff for like years. Like, I saw so many people there and the crowd was amazing. So, and it was energetic, for most of the parts. And so I'm just really, really proud of us for showing up for this event, which hopefully this means that maybe later on down the line, we'll have another pay-per-view. Maybe, maybe not a big four. Maybe, I don't want to sell us that short, but maybe not a big four, maybe a Money in the Bank in the future or something like that. Or I don't know. Maybe a Fast Lane. I don't know. But the sky's the limit for us. And I'm so happy that we are finally seeing that the sky's the limit for us. And other places are seeing it too. And WWE is treating us with respect. And we're treating ourselves with the respect that we deserve as a city. And we're just rising and becoming more than what we have been in the past. And I'm proud to say that this show was amazing. Like, I enjoyed it so much. The matches were great. The action was great. Like, the quality was just great from top to bottom. And for it to be a part of the road to WrestleMania now, I'm not exactly clear on whether or not a Birmingham show has been on the road to WrestleMania before, because there was a period of time where I wasn't here in Birmingham. I was gone to college in Kentucky, so I wasn't able to go to wrestling events like that. But for this show to have been on the road to WrestleMania and for it to have been this good in this city, I am just over the moon about it, and I'm just so thrilled. I'm so happy for us. I'm happy for the city. I'm happy that WWE brought their A game and brought their best to us, like we deserve. I am just over the moon about Smackdown and everything that took place outside of Big E's injury and outside of Roman Reigns not being there, really. But outside of that, the rest of the show was pretty amazing. And I'm so happy that they thought enough of us to come. And I'm happy that we were able to rise to the occasion of being there. And they rose to the occasion of being where we were at. So I'm just really thrilled about the entire situation. I'm so happy to have been there with the people I was there with, and actually sitting next to wrestling fans and talking to them and watching their children lose their minds over who they loved. Like, those were my favorite parts of going to wrestling events outside of being there with my better half. Like, being there amongst the people who love it just as much as you do. Like, those were my favorite parts, and making new friends and stuff like that. Like, that is the kind of stuff that I love. And even pointing yourself out if you see yourself on TV, or, participating in the challenges that took place during the commercial breaks, and loving how Samantha Irvin was announcing everything during the commercial breaks, and how she was getting bucked during the DX theme song or whatever for the DX cam. Like, she went off. Like, I got crunk for her. I love her. Like, it was just an amazing event, and I regret nothing. Like, I'm so happy that we had this type of event now. And considering this was the first WWE event that's been here in 2 years since the pandemic started, I am just so happy that we were able to have this experience. And the best is always yet to come for my love for Birmingham, my love, my hometown, the place that built me, the place that birthed me. Like, I am just so happy that this happened for my city, and the sky is, like I keep saying, the sky is the limit. The best is yet to come. Like, it's only going to get greater from here. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the parts I loved about SmackDown and what I liked in wrestling this week. But I just wanted to take the time to address all of those things because it was just so beautiful and I regret nothing. And I took all kinds of pictures and did videos. Me and my boyfriend did videos and stuff of it. And hopefully I'll probably post more, over the course of the week. But yeah, it was absolutely amazing. And if you haven't had a chance to watch this episode of SmackDown, if you have on-demand capabilities on your TV, please go back and watch it. It's cool. So yeah, it was great. So that's the end of this segment. And now I'm going to talk about what I liked in wrestling this week. Okay, so I was sitting with my friends one day and they asked me, Stephanie, how do you record your podcast? And I said, with the Anchor app on my phone. And they were like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, it's that simple. It is absolutely free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone and your computer. And it will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. You can also make money from the podcast with no minimum listenership. And it's got everything you need to make a podcast in one place. They even have classes and stuff that you can listen to that will give you all kinds of good tips on what you need to do in order to make the best podcast. So if you want to do this, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm or download the free Anchor app to get started. All right, so now we're going to talk about all the things I liked and slightly didn't like in wrestling this week. So on Raw, I loved the Raw Tag Team Championship match between RK Bro and the Alpha Academy and Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens. Like, this match, you could tell that they were really, investing in this match because they stretched it out over the course of the 7:00 hour. Ooh, excuse me, y'all. And it was just really good. It was really, really good. Like I cannot stress enough how important tag team wrestling is. And this match was definitely a standard as to how it should be taken seriously, regardless if they are single stars who are put together or tag teams that have been, tag teams, from the beginning or whatever. Like, it was a really good, high-powered, high-action match. Like, it was just really good, and I was so happy that RK Bro came out the victors because it's clear that people still see it for them and still love them as a team together. And then the best part about it was the fact that Randy Orton, got on the microphone and interviewed with Kevin Patrick and said that he's having the time of his life right now and that he actually considers Riddle a friend. And you can tell that it really lit up Matt Riddle's life when he said that, and they really love each other. And that's the type of brotherhood that I just love to see in wrestling, where you see that they're having fun with each other and, just doing things that they enjoy with each other. Because you would think that somebody like Randy Orton, who's won multiple championships and been in a whole bunch of crazy feuds with a lot of people like your Edges and your John Cenas, and of course various legends like Mick Foley and stuff like that, you would think that somebody who's been going through all that would just feel kind of, apathetic, or not even apathetic, but just a little bit, tired and feeling like they can rest on their laurels, like they've done it all. It's like, you would think that they would feel like, okay, whatever, blah. But he doesn't feel that way with Riddle. And Riddle is having the time of his life because he's working with, someone who's as advanced as Randy Orton. But he's still allowing for Randy Orton to have fun and cracking and busting his balls a little. And they're having fun with each other. And that's really all that matters. And that's just the type of brotherhood stuff I love to see. When it's all said and done, they can say that they were a tag team together and that they had the time of their lives with each other. And that's what I love. Then I also loved how even though the Alpha Academy did lose their tag titles, you were wondering, it was almost like the focus was shifted to what Seth and Kevin Owens were going to do in order to be able to participate in WrestleMania this year. Because normally they would be like your mainstay players who would participate in something huge, right? So after the match was over, they were kind of sitting outside looking, to themselves, looking kind of in outer space, looking like, what are they going to do now? And it was so scary because you saw Seth Rollins walking away, from the ring in a daze. Like, we hadn't really seen him look like that in a daze since Becky announced her pregnancy and he decided that he wanted to beat up on Rey Mysterio and stuff like that during the heavy pandemic era. So that was interesting. So now we are kind of left wondering what is left for him. Even though I did talk about news and gossipish how it's possible that maybe he could be facing off against Cody Rhodes. Maybe that's like I said, it's a rumor, but we just don't know what's left for him. Now, of course, at the end of Raw, we found out what's left for Kevin Owens. He done called out Stone Cold Steve Austin, basically the beer drinking, jean shorts wearing, pickup truck driving Texas man we love him to be. He called him out. So what we gonna do? We don't know. We don't know if it's going to be like an appearance on the Kevin Owens show. We don't know if it's going to be an actual match or if it's going to be a brawl. Like, we don't know what it's going to be. But then Stone Cold Steve Austin accepted whatever challenge it was that Kevin Owens, gave to him at the end of Raw with a video of him driving in a truck and on the and in the desert, and told him how he was sick of hearing him diss the state of Texas, where he's from, and said that he had awakened something that hasn't been awakened in over 19 years. Because really, when you think about it, Stone Cold Steve Austin hasn't really wrestled a full-on match since he fought against The Rock at WrestleMania 19 in Seattle, Washington. That was the first WrestleMania I ever watched, and it was cool. But the rumor was then that at that point, since his injuries was really bad at that point, that this was going to be the last ride for him. And it was his last match for a long... It really was his last match. But we don't know what this is going to be, but it's still exciting because people love Stone Cold Steve Austin. People still see it for him. So I'm really pumped to see where this is going to go. So yeah, that was a really cool part of Raw. I also loved Edge's really dark side promo because we got to see another side of him where he was dressed in a suit and put in dark light, and he was giving off this scary vibe, but it was still a really great promo. And he explained sort of like his actions as to why he attacked AJ Styles the way he did. Because, of course, they're set to fight against each other at WrestleMania. And it was just really interesting to see this new layer of Edge. Because we've seen him be the cool 2000s Edge that he used to be in, and the goofy one that he was with Christian when they were a tag team. And then we've seen the rated R superstar. But now this might be a really darker level Edge that we've never seen before. And I'm actually here for it. Because it shows how adaptable he is to change in terms of his characters and just what he's willing to do for the sake of having a great show at WrestleMania. So I'm really pumped to see where Edge is going to take this character, and I'm also pumped to see what AJ is going to do once he's able to recover and get in his behind for attacking him the way he did. I'm ready for it. I'm here for it. And I also loved, I think this is a mixture of love/hate. I don't really hate it either. I'm sorry. Let me not say that. I loved it, but then I feel mixed about it. You had Queensland sort of seeing her frustrations towards fighting in a tag team match. She had her frustration because Carmella was not focused on their match, and she's been super focused, hyper focused on planning her wedding to Corey Graves because, of course, they're engaged. And if you listen to Bear With Us, their other podcasts that they have outside of wrestling, they've been talking about how they planned their wedding a little bit after, like the week after WrestleMania, or probably the week before. And I've never planned a wedding, but from what I imagine, if your wedding is worth any salt, you're putting all of this elbow grease into it and you're making it, the best day that it could possibly be for you and your better half. But the thing is with Corey and Carmella, it's like Carmella is one half of the women tag team champions with Queen Zelina, and she's not focused on that, and she's leaving, she's leaving Zelina behind in these matches and stuff like that, where they're supposed to be performing against each other. And Zelina lost the match against Rhea Ripley and I believe Liv Morgan, and now they've qualified to be a part of the women's tag team match at WrestleMania against them and Sasha Banks and Naomi now. So it's just kind of like, girl, ma'am, which one are you focused on? Are you more focused on the titles, or are you more focused on the fact that you're about to be Mrs. Corey Graves? And as much as I love romantic stuff and, you know, wedding planning and stuff like that, because of course I'm a girl, but I also feel like business has its place as well. Like, get the business done first, then go off and live happily ever after with, you know, your husband to be. But, you know, it's whatever at this point. I was happy to see them on Smackdown, but I'll get to that later though. But that was something that I kind of liked but kind of didn't like, but it's okay. Now, something that I liked with NXT 2.0 was Dakota Kai and Wendy Choo moving towards the finals of the Women's Dusty Cup. And I was disappointed in the idea that Team KC Squared, that's Kaden Carter and Katie Catanzaro, did not go. Casey Catanzaro did not go to the finals because they have been a solid tag team since before the revamp of NXT. And I feel like their chemistry as a tag team has only gotten better with time. So for the life of me, why is it that they haven't been able to go forward, but then these other tag teams who really didn't start off as a tag team have been pushed for, you know, towards the finals as well? But I'm not mad about Wendy Choo and Dakota Kai moving forward either. And I'm not mad about Io and Kaylee Ray moving forward as well, because of course I love all of them, but it's just Team KC Squared, you know, there's really nothing they've really, you know, been able to accomplish fully as a tag team. And I'm trying to figure out, why is that? Like, why is that? Like, I feel like that's kind of not fair, but I mean, gosh, why? And then on top of that, you had Toxic Attraction as Gigi, and JC interfering in the match and basically injuring Raquel Gonzalez, much to the chagrin of Cora Jade, who then attacked Mandy Rose afterward later on in the show. That was amazing. And I was just like, girl, yes, get buck on her. Like, because she really did want to participate in the tournament and possibly win the cup with Raquel, but Toxic Attraction just wasn't having it, and they attacked Raquel, and Cora didn't like it, so she attacked the crap out of Mandy Rose in the Toxic Lounge, and it was just amazing. Also, I thought it was funny how Idris Enofe and Malik Blade were beat up the other waiters or waitresses that was serving Mandy Rose in the Toxic Lounge, and they took their place. And that was pretty funny to me, because they're doing anything to get Malik Blade close to Mandy Rose, because he has a mad crush on her, which I get because she's pretty, but still, Jesus Christ, we can't be beating up our waitresses now, our waiters now. Like, God, chill out. I also liked how Tiffany Stratton got upset by Fallon Henley in their match against each other, because she's been bullying Saray because apparently she feels like her clothes or her jewelry taste really isn't as good as hers or whatever. And I was glad that Saray interfered in their match and allowed for Fallon to get the win, even though I'm still kind of on the fence as to who Fallon Henley really is, even though she has been hanging out with Brooks Jensen and Josh Briggs or whatever, because they came out to celebrate her win after it happened. But it's just, I was happy that Saray was able to get revenge on Tiffany Stratton, because she just been bullying folks just because she got her daddy's money, and that's stupid. Like, I hate folks like that. It's just like, oh yeah, well, my daddy is this person and I'm important because my daddy did this and my daddy did that. Girl, bye. Who are you by yourself? Who are you by yourself and outside of the realms of your daddy? Because once he stops giving you that money, who are you really? I wonder if they're going to ever get into that as, you know, as her character continues to develop and as she continues to develop as a star. Will they figure out who she is without her dad? But that's the future. That's another conversation for another day. But yeah. I also loved how Carmelo Hayes, the NXT North American champion, and Trick Williams were hanging out in a barbershop and talking about their plans for Dallas in terms of NXT Stand and Deliver. And this was where they announced that Carmelo Hayes wants to participate in a ladder match with 4 other participants who could possibly qualify for this match in the next few weeks, and they will go on to face him for the title at Stand and Deliver, which will be taking place in the afternoon before night 1 of WrestleMania. There's a lot of stuff going on that weekend. So Trick was kind of like, bro, why I gotta be in a ladder match though? But then Carmella was like, because, it was the first time we saw the North American title, it was defended in a ladder match. And so he wanted to prove that couldn't nobody beat him and that he doesn't miss or whatever. So he's really trying out to prove something here. And I, for one, am looking forward to it. But I love how they were in a barbershop together, because that's just a cultural... If you are in the African American community, that's just a very, sacred place to be, where men, and sometimes women talk about certain things, and have fun and, argue about sports and various issues and stuff like that. Like the barbershop and the beauty shop, up to an equal measure, are basically cultural tent poles in the Black community. So to see that, portrayed on television was really cool. So I like that very much. And then another part of NXT I liked was the Lashing Out segment with Lash Legend and Nikita Lyons, because somehow or another, I believe on NXT Level Up, which is their new show, Lash Legend beat someone in a match. I think it was Amari Miller. She beat Amari Miller in a match, and she was talking crap to Nikita Lyons because she felt like folks should have been talking about her instead. But the only reason that people were talking about Nikita was because of how she looked. And, and basically she accused Nikita of having fake assets or whatever, and basically saying like every bit of you is fake, and folks need to be focused on me and all this other stuff. And then she interrupted her while she was talking, and Nikita didn't take too kindly to it, and so they got into it. So hopefully this means that they finna fight at some point. So I'm ready for it, and I'm really ready for it, because the thing about, I love Lash Legend and the attitude that she has, but I feel like her and Nikita both are in this space where they're great at garnering attention, and they are good in the ring, but there's still so much more improvement to be made on them because they're still so brand spanking new. And of course, as they continue to grow, they can only get better from here. But Nikita cannot help that she went viral and caught a lot of people's attention just because of, the abilities that she does have, and because she's a beautiful woman. She can't help that. Like, that's something that she can't help. So why would you, hate on her because of it? Like, it's just really awkward for me. I don't have anything negative to say about Nikita Lyons ever. At all, and I don't have anything negative to say about Lash Legend either. So I just hope that both girls continue to grow as wrestlers, and I hope that they just get a great feud out of this. Like, I'm really pumped for it. Like, I really hope they do get a good spotlight out of this feud that they're having with each other. So it's gonna be all right regardless. So, and Lash Legend is also gorgeous, as well. So it's whatever. Now, something that, and I did address it, I didn't like it, but I already talked about Team KC Squared. But something that caught me all the way off guard was Dolph Ziggler going on to win the NXT Championship from Braun Breaker and Tommaso Ciampa. That was something I was not expecting at all. They done shook up the landscape of NXT forever. And it's just like, God dang. And yeah, you can say that maybe Bobby Roode was out there to help and give him some assistance or whatever. But this match was really good before that point. But I just cannot believe that Dolph Ziggler won like that. And on top of that, the fact that Braun Breaker, who is still so very new and still finding himself, he was sort of the face of the rebrand. And now the face of the rebrand is a Raw superstar. Like, what the heck? I mean, I know that's going to give more exposure to NXT to people who might not watch it or something like that. But Jesus Christ, I just wasn't expecting that at all. Dolph Ziggler is NXT champion. And the woman that he was trying to woo against Otis a few years back is NXT women's champion. This is not something I would have predicted years ago. But here we are. wrestling is always interesting, and this is very interesting. So wow. Something that I do want to talk about that I did like in terms of AEW is the fact that Swerve Strickland won on Rampage. Even though I wasn't able to watch Rampage because, of course, I was at SmackDown, I was happy to hear that he won his debut. So that's good. I'm happy for him. I'm happy that Jade is still the TBS champion. Even though Ty Conti, I didn't see that match because I wasn't financially in a place to buy AEW Revolution because the struggle is real sometimes and bills need to be paid. I'm sorry. But it's just, I'm happy that Jade is still champion. And I'm also happy that Scorpio Sky became the first black TNT champion, even though a lot of people feel like it's not going to last long because I feel like Wardlow has been in a place to possibly win it from him at the St. Patrick's Slam episode of Dynamite or whatever. But I'm happy that at the very least he was able to do that and make that history. So I'm happy for him. And I'm happy that Jade is TBS champion. These are two black superstars who have done great things at this point. But I'm still waiting for somebody to qualify for the AEW championship itself who is black. So I'm still waiting on that. But outside of that, I am happy for them. I'm not going to take that from them at all. But yeah, I also dislike for AEW. I dislike the fact that Britt Baker is still champion. Like, I'm mad. But at least Thunder Rosa is going to get another chance to fight her at the St. Patrick's Day Slam in a steel cage, I heard. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Because I am willing to admit when I'm wrong about stuff like that. But I'm happy that she's going to get another chance, in Texas. But at the same time, I was almost thinking like maybe Thunder Rosa was going to be it for her. Like, I thought Thunder Rosa wasn't going to get another chance at all after losing at Revolution or whatever, but it seems like she is, so that's good. But if she wasn't going to get another chance, I was really pulling for Deonna Purrazzo to challenge Britt Baker. Because ultimately, when it comes to being the final boss in women's wrestling, it's Deonna. And considering Tony Khan bought Ring of Honor, it would only make sense. But, I don't know how that's going to go. So we'll just have to see. But yeah, those are a few of the things I like and dislike at AEW. And when it comes to Impact, I just have to send a congratulations to Tasha Steelz for becoming the new Impact Knockouts champion. She beat Mickie James. And as much as I love my Mickie James, I'm so happy that we have an Afro-Latina Knockouts champion. I'm so happy for her. Congratulations to her. I've never met her or had any interactions with her on social media, but I am happy for her because, girl, yes, I'm glad. So yeah. And in terms of SmackDown, though, of being there, I loved everything about that show, like I said earlier. I love that Pat McAfee got in Austin Theory's face, and then watching it on TV and hearing how Michael Cole was trying to get Pat to be the better person, that was hysterical to me. I'm just sitting here like, Michael Cole, now you ought to know that a person can only be the better person for so long until they get sick of being messed with. And Pat is not the person to mess with. You don't mess with a person whose theme song is Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes. I'm sorry. You don't mess with nobody like that. Plus, he used to be a football player. Like, y'all ain't finna mess with Pat McAfee like that. Like, Austin Theory does not want it with Pat. And I'm ready to see Pat beat his behind at WrestleMania. I was yelling for him. Like, we were all rooting for Pat McAfee to kick his behind. And even though security broke them up and Austin was trying to jump at him or whatever, Pat wasn't having it. And then when he left behind, when he was going to Gorilla, I screamed out, "We love you, Pat!" And he raised his fist at us. And I was just like, yes, he heard me. Come on, Pat. I love Pat McAfee. His energy, his soul. I love him. I love Pat. This is a Pat McAfee Stan podcast. We love him. Oh my God, I love him. I was just so happy to see that. I also loved watching this one dude on WWE staff run back and forth to relay messages. I don't know what he was doing, but he was running back and forth. Like, I told my boyfriend, like, he's a runner, he's a track star. He was running back and forth, and I really feel like he's the MVP of the show because he was just doing whatever he could, and I appreciated that. And I also love how when Brock Lesnar threw the WWE Championship and they kept it behind the commentary desk or whatever, or in the space where Samantha Irvin was sitting at, he actually let the kids on the front row touch the title. So shout out to that man. He was great. He had braided hair. He was a black dude. I don't know who you are, but you popped off last night, and I appreciated that. And I also loved how Samantha Irvin really got Buck, you know, during the DX theme song. Like, during the DX cam part, which y'all didn't see on TV, where the audience was, you know, having fun with the DX cam and everything, the theme song came on and she was like, "You think that you're better?" I was like, girl, come on then. If you gonna sing the song, sing the song. Do it. Like, I was getting crunk. Like, come on. Like, Samantha Irvin was giving all of the things last night. And I know that she's still new, but we should definitely give her flowers. Samantha Irvin was doing her an absolute stellar job getting the audience involved with the activities, with the dance cam, the DX cam, and the sign cam. Like, I love her. She did such a good job. I loved it. It was great. And I'm pretty sure she had an amazing time announcing Ricochet as the winner of the main event for the Intercontinental title. Like, and she was rooting for him in the corner too. Like, you saw her, like, every time there was a 2 count where Ricochet would kick out or whatever, she would go 2, and I was just like, oh my god, Samantha, root for your man. I love it. So it was just really cool. And then watching Ricochet hit the 450 splash, I hope I'm saying that correctly. Watching him hit the 450 splash, though, in person was a thing of beauty. Like, Ricochet is a beautiful athlete. We need to give him more credit because he is such a great athlete, and he just deserves all the great things. So it was great seeing him fight against Sami Zayn. And then watching Sami Zayn trip over his phone number being given out on an airplane and on social media in front of Kayla, who, shout out to Kayla, is from Alabama too, was really funny. That was cool too. Then I also love seeing Sasha and Naomi live. Like, oh my god, I love them so much. And I love seeing Queen Zelina live too. And I was able to bow to her as the queen she is. I was just really happy, you know, seeing all the women's action, you know, and just seeing them being a part of the whole show. Like, that was cool with Ronda and Charlotte, and watching Charlotte looking like a champagne bottle. Girl was looking fantastic in them heels and the sparkly dress and the feathers. I was like, yes, girl, get it. Look expensive. You are Flair. But yeah, like, it was good. And like, I just loved everything about the show. I probably sound like a child right now talking about everything I loved or what my favorite parts were. But it was just amazing to see that and amazing to be there. And I loved watching Xia Li's entrance, even though I had somebody holding my place in the merch line. Shout out to that lady who held my place in the merchandise line. You did not have to do that, but you did that, and you were kind, and I appreciated that. You didn't have to do that, but you did. And I appreciate it. And I also love the fact that they were selling Alabama 316 t-shirts. I got one for me and my boyfriend. I'm excited to wear them out in public. Oh my God, I'm so pumped. And then I bought a Triple H pop for my dad, which he appreciated. He didn't go to the event because he went to see my mom, who's recovering in rehabilitation since her health episode. So y'all just continue to pray for my family. It's been rough still, but at the same time, we've still been able to handle everything as best as we possibly can. But still, you know, pray for us and stuff. My mom is coming around in a positive way. She's getting stronger every day. So my dad and my sister were with her. And they weren't at the wrestling event, but it was still nice to be there in the midst of all of that, you know, and just to get away from everything that's been going on with, you know, all the drama and stuff. But still, it was great to be there. It was such a beautiful event. And then for it to be on the road to WrestleMania and to just watch everybody perform well and watch Sasha Banks do her rocking DDT, which is what I'm calling it now because I don't think there's a name for it at this point. And watching Naomi and all of her beauty and everything, and just seeing Drew McIntyre be as big and buff as he is, and even seeing the New Day, you know, like that was great too, even though it ended in such a sad way with Big E getting injured and stuff. Like that was so rough to witness, but I'm glad that he is still doing okay. Like Smackdown was just a lit affair, and I just cannot wait for it to come back. Hopefully once all the other construction and stuff is over, you know, we can start new traditions, because normally at WWE live events coming to BJCC, we're able to stand outside at the fence and see the wrestlers go away, you know, and drive off, and they usually come out and interact with us. But that didn't happen this time because of all the renovations and stuff that's happened. That whole parking deck is gone where they used to park. Like everything we used to know is basically gone. But I guess that's just, you know, a part of life and a part of the changes of everything that's happened in the past 2 years and stuff. So you just have to be able to adapt to the changes that's going on and still manage to have a good time out of it. And a good time was had. So I'm happy that I was there for that and we experienced that. It was great. And I got to point at the WrestleMania sign, which is fantastic. And I hope that that's a, you know, signal of things to possibly come. But, you know, you just never know. But yeah, that's everything I loved about wrestling this week. And so now we're going to go to the conclusion. All right, so thank you for listening to this new episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl, Stephanie Hardy. As usual, know that you can follow the Hardy Wrestling Podcast on Instagram at Hardy Wrestling Podcast and on Twitter at Hardy Wrestle Pod. I was also happy to be featured in the Q&A that was done by Wrestling Wind Down for Women's History Month. It was such an honor to be highlighted in that way. So that was in their Instagram stories. I'm not sure if they posted it anymore, but I was really happy to be asked to be a part of that. And I'm happy, you know, to have my top 5 Stephanie McMahon moments article on Women's Wrestling Talks website. So if you haven't read that already, please check it out. And I hope you also, you know, enjoyed my Birmingham post about wrestling moments that happened in Birmingham leading up to Smackdown this week. So I really hope you've been enjoying that. And I just hope that you just continue to support my show. The Hardy Wrestling Podcast YouTube channel reached 80 subscribers this week, and I'm so proud of y'all. And I thank you guys for supporting my show. And I hope that it continues to grow and, you know, become the best that it can be. So yeah, just thank you so much for supporting the show and listening to it as much as you possibly, you know, can, and just continue to do that for me, because it can only grow up from here, and there's so much growth that can happen, you know, with my show and everything. So thank you guys so much for supporting it, and I hope that you're being your best self, and I hope that you're being healthy and taking care of yourself and doing the very best that you can with everything that you've got going on, and manifesting good things and showing, you know, and being the light in a dark world, because there is some dark stuff going on in the world, right? But if you continue to just, you know, make a conscious effort to be your best self and be the light of the world, then the world will get a little bit better for others and also for yourself as well. So with that in mind, this is the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with your girl, Stephanie Hardy. The podcast that now John Cena follows on Twitter. Haha, I forgot to mention that. But yeah, Birmingham 316 says, "Stop sleeping on us. We're great. Bye, y'all."